It's been called the most sophisticated sting operation in history. A blitzkrieg of raids ending with, listen to this, 800 arrests from 700 locations in 100 countries. The target? Organised crime in Australia, New Zealand and Europe. It was a masterful exercise in deception, an operation worthy of its own web series. So tonight we'll tell you how it unfolded, how the big guns of the underworld were catfished by police officers. The story begins last year. European police busted two major encrypted phone networks. This left a big gap in underworld communications. The Federal Bureau of Investigation, or the FBI, saw an opportunity here. If they could launch their own encrypted network, it could keep tabs on these criminals. So the Anom network was created. Anonymous, encrypted, and seemingly safe. The next step was to push these phones into the underworld, and for this, the FBI relied on insiders, double agents in organized crime. They sold these phones in the black market for around $2,000. The trick worked. Drug lords and arms dealers were raggedly searching for these phones. Around 12,000 of these devices were sold worldwide. What these criminals did not know was this. Police officers were reading all their messages. Their next arms deal, their drug payments, their planned hits. More than 27 million messages were reviewed in 18 months. This is how an FBI agent described the evidence that they saw.
And to give you an idea of the magnitude of our penetration, we were able to actually see photographs of hundreds of tons of cocaine that were concealed in shipments of fruit. We were able to see hundreds of kilos of cocaine that were concealed in canned goods.
These Anom phones were basically a Trojan horse, a seemingly harmless network that was actually gathering incriminating evidence. So the thinking hats at the FBI decided to call this Operation Trojan Shield. The first step was a success. They had all the evidence they needed. The next step was to move in, arrest these criminals and confiscate their goods. And this was the hard part. The operation had to be simultaneous, you see. If any group got wind of what was happening, they would escape, which is why a blitzkrieg approach was chosen. 16 countries pooled their resources. All of them struck in a window of 7 days. So by the time one raid ended, the other had already begun. There was no window to escape. Now, these were top secret operations, but the officers did manage to capture some of it on camera. These pictures were released by the AFP, that's the Australian Federal Police. They called it Operation Ironside. It was a combination of night raids, chases, and arrests in broad daylight. We've pieced together some of the key moments for you. Take a look at this.
Today, the Australian government, as part of a global operation, has struck a heavy blow against organised crime, not just in this country, but one that will echo around organised crime around the world. This is a watershed moment in Australian law enforcement history.
That was just a sample of the operation. 700 locations were raided in all, some of them in New Zealand. Officers there arrested 35 people. They also recovered $2.7 million. All these gung-ho raids sound dramatic, and indeed they were. But where does this leave organised crime? These are not groups that peacefully walk into the sunset. They will be planning a comeback. So this is not the end of organised crime, but this is a heavy setback. The FBI claims around 100 lives were saved by these operations, and a lot of illegal stuff was seized. More than 6 tons of cocaine, 6 tons, 5 tons of marijuana, 2 tons of meth, and $148 million in cash. We don't have numbers for the illegal weapons they hoarded, but put together, these gangs had enough to create a lot of trouble. Right now, there is a mood of jubilation in the law enforcement community, and rightly so. This is a big victory. But what happens next? How can this momentum be sustained? A lot of it depends on the politics. This operation was possible because of synergy, because 16 nations cooperated. To keep this cooperation alive, the politicians will have to step up, because organized crime has seeped into all levels of society. Asking beat cops to combat drug lords and arms dealers just won't cut it. Much like anti-terrorism operations, this needs planning, it needs intelligence sharing and precise execution. Operation Trojan Shield was a success, and the key is to turn the success into a template. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.